format that you guys are doing?
We'll just do openers and then open discussion.
Okay.
What do you think? Like 5 minutes each, or?
Sure.
Okay.
You guys don't want more time than that?
No.
Okay.
Mine will be pretty short.
5 minutes of openers, 45 minutes open discussion, and then do you want closing statements or no?
No.
Might as well. We could always just
TJump, shut it down.
cede the time.
Closing statements are pointless. I'm right, you're wrong. That's all they say.
Okay.
Okay. Let's roll them.
All right.
Oh my god, you stupid fucking hotkeys.
Leo has Tourette's.
Just don't use hotkeys.
I actually have autism. That's what it is. Well, it's because I use hotkeys for StreamYard. Control D, it turns on and off your mic. But if it's not set for StreamYard, like if I don't click somewhere in the actual StreamYard page, then Control D adds a new tab to my Google Chrome.
Yes, hotkeys work on whichever app you had activated last because it's supposed to recognize by the keyboard. That's why I use the mouse and I just click the gigantic microphone.
That big microphone at the bottom, yeah.
All right, y'all. We're going live.
Let's do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Neat.
All
Can I ask
right.
one
Snake,
question?
Every damn time, Snake. Don't you understand that you are a competitor and you have no rights? No rights. I am your queen. I am your queen. And
When was Godless on here?
hello, everybody. Welcome to Debate Cafe. We are very excited to be announcing our debate between The Snake Was Right and TJump. We have a second guest to keep my corruption in check, unfortunately, and that will be Leo Filius. And the motion that we are debating today, I believe, Snake, correct me if I'm wrong, but I am never wrong. It is that it's about moral objectivism, right?
Moral realism and specifically critiquing Tom's version.
All right, fantastic. With that, I would like to.
We do have to thank Stupid Horror Energy for. Basically, she's a producer at this point of this debate, for she has paid Tom.
It's a sponsor.
Yeah, that's true.
Sponsor.
Sponsored by Stupid Horror. Anyway.
All right. With that in mind, I'd like to allow our 3 guests, or 2 guests and 1 old fart who's always on this channel.
Wait, which one is that?
I am the Senate.
You're the Senate? All right, Senate. Would you like to introduce yourself first as our celebrity judge?
Wait, she has a pet monkey?
Wait, what? Wow,
Apparently.
that's so cute. I didn't know that. Oh.
I would have
a very
requested the pet
complex
money.
lore.
I would have requested the pet monkey as payment instead of money.
We can get you one. We can get you one. But please allow 3 to 5 business days for that. Yeah. Leo, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, I didn't know I was a celebrity. I mean, maybe some sort of niche internet micro celebrity, but outside of that, definitely not. I'm just a guy on the internet who likes to make videos on physics and philosophy.
All right.
Sounds
And
boring.
TJump, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
I make boring or videos on physics and philosophy.
All right. And Snake, who the fuck are you?
Just some guy. Yeah, I make stuff about atheism, science. Comment on Tom's channel sometimes. I think we've exchanged like 3 words before. So yeah.
We've been in a debate together. What?
Have we?
I'm pretty sure. Like I think we did a 2v2 on Modern Day Debate once.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
Were you
I've-
guys together or fighting?
They
each
all
other?
blend together at this point.
They do. It does happen.
Yeah. All right.
All right. So with that in mind, let's get started. And what is the exact wording of this motion, Snake?
I just have it as TJump's morals are wrong.
So that would make you the government, correct?
Yes.
All right. So government.
Affirmative.
Affirmative. Yeah. You get to go first. Should we get started?
Yep.
All right. 5-minute intro on the clock in 3, 2, 1, and -1, go.
Okay. So one problem that people, including myself, have with TJump's moral system is that it basically boils down to imposition of will is bad, and this kind of creates some problems. I don't disagree that it's bad, but I feel like it's kind of incomplete. So first off, this would basically include inanimate objects like falling rocks or gravity because it imposes on will. And non-agents can't be moral or immoral because there's no prescription for future behavior. Human behavior, I personally believe, is deterministic, but they still can make decisions. They can be aware of what their decisions are. So that's what makes them agents. That's the difference between them and inanimate objects. So this leads to contradiction in terms, since there's now no oughts, and the purpose of morals is to tell someone whether they should or should not do something. And you need an ought when talking about morality, as I understand it. Well, as I understand Tom's moral system, it's just purely descriptive. And so the other problem I have is that the system is not complete. And I think you could complete it by adding in the objective properties of good and bad. As far as I understand it, you don't. Maybe you can correct me. So we have imposition of will as immoral, but it's not clear to me what actions would be morally good or praiseworthy. So adding in like coherent concepts of good and bad solves this, and also solves the contradiction I laid out. So I think you're on the right track, but I don't think there's a reason to respect preferences as far as will goes as being a good or correct thing. Well, I think there is. I just don't think that the system has it as is. And imposition of will is not a foundational moral principle. I think it can be derived. So basically, I just don't think it's complete. The other problem with basing
Dumbass.
imposition of will is that it superficially at least seems to be subjective, since there's no objective standard of what a will is or why executing one's will is good. It's just preference, which is subjective. I'm a moral realist, and I think prescriptive claims are a form of descriptive claims. Any prescription is a description of someone's preference or what someone thinks is correct or good. So in that, you can have truth statements in a moral claim. You ought to brush your teeth is a claim that brushing your teeth is good for you. So that raises the question of what's good and bad, and we can talk about that. And yeah, so basically, I kind of think you're on the right track, but I think that your system could be completed with a little bit more with adding in the objective properties of good and bad.
All right, you want me to
So,
start mine?
yeah, do you have any intro, or do you want to just go right in?
Well, am I supposed to wait for her to do the clock thingy, or do I just start?
You can start in 5, 4,
Okay, I'm gonna start now.
3, 2, 1, start.
Yeah, so my view of morality is that morality refers to our intuitions when we see stuff happen. So when we see somebody punch a baby, we feel that's bad. And when we see somebody help an old lady across the street, we feel that's good. And so the collection of all things that we have these feelings towards is what we refer to when we use moral terms. That's it. There's no oughts involved. You don't need an ought at all for that, because morality just refers to these specific feelings we have when we have these specific experiences, and that's it. Whatever is causing those, that's what morality is. If it's evolution, that's what morality is. If it's God, that's what morality is. Doesn't matter. So oughts are irrelevant here. They don't play any role in those specific sensations. Oughts are just an interpretation of what those sensations mean. Like we feel like you ought not do it, but the feeling themselves is what morality is, not the oughtness in the feeling. That doesn't make a difference. I do think that if we plot out all the different things that we feel have these feelings for, and we try to find a pattern in those things, we can give principles for what we think describes the essence of morality. So if we find a common principle that undergirds all the different individual things that we feel moral feelings towards, we can get an idea of what morality is. And one of these similarities is not hurting, not imposing other people's wills. Snake mentioned I don't have a positive. I do. Positives, praiseworthy things would be voluntary assistance of people's wills. So the opposite of involuntary imposition of will, it's voluntary assistance of will. So there's also a moral aspect there. It's just the opposite. Just use immorality as the basis to describe things. I do think that falling rocks can be immoral, because I think that the properties of what morality is, as we've seen it change through moral progress over time, the scope of morality increases from things that we once didn't see as moral to things that we do now see as moral. Certain groups of people we thought were subhuman, we thought they were more like animals. Then once we came to an intellectual understanding, we then grouped them in with moral beings, and this pattern will continue to include animals, and then further to include nature, which we can already see happening. Christianity calls these natural evils: tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, etc. There are things in the world that are evil, independent of minds there. Same with, because we are determined, because we are materialistic things who don't really have choices, we are equally as much free as a rock is free. And so us killing a person is no different from a rock killing a person or a bear killing a person. So it doesn't make any sense to make an arbitrary distinction between our awareness of the action and the rock's awareness of the action, because they're equally as determined by physical forces. And what matters, if you compare the statement good versus moral, and you want to say what is more like important or what has more authority, typically the word moral has more authority. But under this presumption that morality only applies to conscious agents, then a perfectly moral world would not be as good as a perfectly good world, which seems weird. Seems weird to think that's the case. And so because I think morality would be synonymous with good, a perfectly moral world would have to be a perfectly good world. And in order to achieve that, you need to understand that all forms of goodness or badness are entailed within morality, not just those specifically related to conscious agents. For that, you need to include rocks and stuff. Snake said the purpose of morality was to tell people what ought to do. Like, no, morality doesn't have a purpose in that sense. Morality is a phenomenon that exists, and we describe that phenomenon. It's not something we invented. It's a thing that exists. It is a sensation, and so you can't label it with a purpose. The intended goal of our usage of the language is to encourage people what to do, but that's a hypothetical imperative, not a categorical imperative, and mine has those two. If you want to be moral, you ought to do X. But there's no oughtness inherent in the morality, and this can be proven. It's something good because you ought to do it, or ought you do it because it's good? Usually go with the second one. You ought to do something because it's good based off some independent set of criterion, and therefore oughtness isn't actually in morality anywhere. It's a thing we label. We use to label moral facts. Um, I can just conclude there, I guess. And I think a good way to test models of morality is to describe where they lead, what is a perfectly moral world under that condition, and does the perfectly moral world which perfectly moral world corresponds to our moral intuitions. My perfectly moral world is a one where it's impossible to force anyone to do anything they don't consent to doing. I think that is a morally perfect world. And so if there's some alternative definition of morality, you'd have to give a description of what it would define as the perfectly moral world, and we can compare the outcomes to see which is better. That's loud. All right, I can conclude there for now.
Would you like to finish your thought real quick?
That was it.
Okay. All right. So without further ado, let's get into the 45 minutes of open discussion.
All right. So you said that morality is based on feelings, and wouldn't that be subjective?
No. The subjective experience of morality is our feelings, just like our subjective experience of a TV is subjective. It doesn't mean the TV is a subjective thing.
So we would have to be observing some like true objective property of reality?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I think I'm not sure if I use the word purpose, but if I did, I would amend that to morality has a function, and that's to inform future behavior. And but I that's why I make a distinction between good and bad and moral and immoral, because morality would be, what agents do, and good and bad would be like the facts about morality that make these decisions true. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just think it's wrong. So I imagine a perfectly moral world and a perfect world. Are those the same thing or different?
A perfect world and a perfectly moral world. I suppose. I guess the perfect world, right?
Yeah, in my position, they're the same. I think that morality as a term would refer to the goodness of the world. I don't think it's just a subjective thing that only applies to agents. And so if we had a perfectly moral world, that would include no death, no suffering. It wouldn't just be we're not killing each other anymore. That's just irrelevant. The vast majority of evil in the world has nothing to do with what people do. And so if morality is relegated to people, that's pretty small and insignificant when comparing the best universe. It's pretty much irrelevant. And so I think that morality more accurately refers to goodness. And I think that's what the evidence indicates. When we look at moral progress, our scope of morality increases. And as we gain in technology, it will continue to increase until we see rocks as fallen as people as immoral.
And I agree that good and bad are independently, objectively verifiable. It's just that I think that that's a different concept from morality, because what you said that a rock and a person, they're all deterministic, so there's no reason to differentiate them. But a rock can't be aware of the consequences of its actions, so it can't learn. So a human is determined, but if it can learn the consequences of its actions, it can thus make determined decisions, but decisions based on knowledge of the outcome. A rock can't do that, and I think that's a meaningful difference.
Why?
Because they can actually decide to shape the world differently based on their knowledge.
What difference does that make to the morality? Like for me, if a rock falls on a person and they die, and a person shoots another person and they die, both of those have equal as much damage. I don't care about future thoughts. It's irrelevant. The immorality of those two worlds is the same. The amount of damage done in those worlds is the same. Who cares what the rock decides to do next?
Well, because you can't teach a rock not to kill someone, but you can teach a person not to kill someone.
So does that change the level of immorality in the universe? I think not.
Yeah, because if you teach people about morality, then they'll increase the level of goodness and try and decrease the level of immorality. But rocks can't do that.
Well, if we could change the laws of physics to increase the level of goodness, then we wouldn't need to teach them anything, and we have the same outcome.
I'm not sure what that would mean. To teach the laws of physics?
No, change the laws of
If
physics.
okay,
So like you're saying, we're changing some psychology of a person so they act differently. That would be essentially no different from changing the laws of physics so the rocks act differently and they don't fall on people.
but we can't change the laws of physics. We can't argue with physics. We can argue with humans, though,
Well,
or
that wouldn't make a
any
difference.
any intelligent entity.
Whether we can change it doesn't make a difference to the argument here, because your argument is that what makes something moral is the ability to influence their actions to change their behavior in some way for future outcomes. If we could do that for physics, we'd have the same thing. We just change the laws of physics. And I think we will be able to change the laws of physics in the future, but that's a separate topic.
Yeah, so, but you can't change the laws of physics, but you can change human minds. So there's a.
Well, you can change the laws
It's
of
less.
physics. The laws of physics can change, and we will be able to change them. But that's not. I don't see.
Well,
why
I'm
that's
not sure
relevant.
about like the fundamental laws of physics, but. So yeah, I just don't think that that's the proper use of the word, because the definition of morality is talking about good and bad behavior.
Well, there is no definition of morality. That's just not a thing. Like if you just go to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy definition of morality, like there is no one definition of morality. There are descriptive definitions. There are prescriptive definitions. There's no one definition. Morality is a thing that exists. It's a phenomenon. And so you don't get to define it. You're just trying to describe the phenomenon. Like if we say light, there's no definition of light. It's just light is a thing that exists, and we try to apply a definition to that thing. The same thing goes for morality. It's a phenomenon. We experience it. So there's no definition of morality.
But you could identify properties of a phenomenon.
Right. That's what we're doing.
So so there is a difference between the phenomenon of good and bad and the phenomenon of self-aware entities understanding good and bad.
Well, no, I think the debate here is like when we look at morality and we're trying to describe the patterns of that phenomenon, you think the pattern is oughtness and prescription, and I think the pattern is involuntary impositions of will. And so we're both thinking that there's a different core feature to this phenomenon. And the question is, well, is oughtness actually in morality? And I think no, and I think we can prove that. Is something moral because you ought to do it, or ought you do it because it's moral? Like, how would you answer that?
Yeah, so an ought is either a description of a preference or a description of what someone thinks is good.
Specifically
or correct.
To my question, is something moral because you ought to do it, or ought you do it because it's moral? How would you answer that question?
You ought do it because it's moral.
Yeah, and what does that imply? What does giving that answer mean? Like, let me try to paint a picture for you. If something is moral because you ought to do it, that means that oughtness is some intrinsic property within morality. It's like if you had a bubble around morality and there's a list of all the properties of what makes something moral. Oughtness is one of those properties inside the bubble. But if you ought to do something because it's moral, that means that you have this bubble with all the list of morality, of properties of morality. Oughtness is outside of that bubble. You first discover all of these properties, you know what morality is, and then you say, once you know what morality is, you then apply this external ought. Say, okay, now I know what it is, therefore I ought to do it. And so based on that answer, we know oughtness isn't a part of morality. It's not a part of morality whatsoever. We can apply some external hypothetical imperative and say, okay, if I want to be moral, I ought to do this. But the ought itself is nowhere in morality.
Okay, so yeah, I think I would change my answer then, because you ought to do something because it's good, and therefore it's moral because you ought to do it.
Okay, I didn't understand that. You ought to do something because it's good.
Yeah, like that would be the kind of the definition of ought is it is good. And so you kind of gave the dichotomy of it ought it be done because it's moral, or is it moral because it ought be done? But I think there's another option, which is it ought be done because it's good or correct. And from that, you derive what morality is. So there's the ought based on just what good and bad is. And then the morality is what is basically informing the behavior of the agent. So that the morality would be based on the ought.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. I think the vast majority of people usually answer with the second dilemma. I'll leave it up to the judges. How would the judges answer? Is something moral because you ought to do it, or ought you do it because it's moral? And if you lean towards the second one, you ought do it because it's moral. That means morality is more fundamental than oughtness, and oughtness is separate. And that's where I lean. And because I lean that way, I think that oughtness is not one of the fundamental properties of morality. And the evidence for this is the fact that we are becoming more aware and we're seeing more moral implications towards things that don't have consciousness, like veganism or not killing any living things or natural evils in Christianity. We see morality in non-conscious things all the time. And I think this is going to continue. I think based on your definition, if we evolved technologically to the point where no human being could harm another human being, I don't think moral language is going to disappear. I don't think we're just going to stop using moral language altogether and just refer to things as good and bad. We will just incorporate the words of morality and expand them to mean things like rocks when rocks falling on people. So when no one is killing anybody else, the word moral and immoral in our culture will be referring to things in nature which kill us, because morality to humans has a very powerful, significant meaning, far more so than good and bad. Like good and bad versus moral and immoral. Moral and immoral are significantly more powerful to us. They care more about them. But by your definition, the opposite is the true. Good and bad are more significant, and we should care more about them. But this is not the way our psychology works. It doesn't pair well with the usage of the words.
I'm not arguing that we should care more about the concept of good and bad. I just think it's better understood that good and bad is a separate, though barely separate, very similar concept to moral and immoral. So, yeah, I think it's best to separate those concepts, because you could call a rock bad. A rock killing someone is bad, but there's a different property there because the rock doesn't know what it's doing and a human does.
Well, we've kind of already been over that part. The part I'm trying to bring up is like, think about a maximally good world versus a maximally moral world. If we gave this to people to pick, which world would you rather be a part of, a maximally good world or a maximally moral world? Most people are going to pick the moral world because that word morality has so much more significance to us. Good just is like meh, like it's like a middle ground, kind of like a who cares kind of a thing. But by your definition, goodness is like infinitely more important than morality. A perfectly good world would mean no death, no suffering, no tornadoes, no sickness, no cancer. But a perfectly moral world just means nobody's killing one another, nobody hurts one another or whatever. But we'd still all die, still be cancer, all that kind of stuff, which doesn't jive with our intuitions. Like moral as a concept is significantly bigger and better than goodness. And so if we think a maximally moral world, we think that must be better than a maximally good world. But by your definition, that's the opposite. It's completely backwards. And because of how we use the intuitions of those words, where the moral concept has primacy and is more important, it seems like the way we think of morality is a much broader concept than the way you're using it in a specifically human context.
One, it seems like you are separating the concepts of good and moral, unless you're just
for the sake of the argument.
My concepts, okay.
Yeah.
But it would seem that a perfectly good world would necessarily include a perfectly moral world, because morality is good.
Right. But I'm asking from most people, the way they use the words. If you ask them, would you have a maximally perfect or maximally good world versus a maximally moral world, which one is better? Most people are going to say maximally moral is better, just based on how they intuitively use the words. So the way the vast majority of people intuitively understand morality, it is a bigger, more important concept than the way they understand good. But the way you're using it, that's not the case. The way you're using it is in disconnection with the way the vast majority of people understand the terms morality and its relation to good.
Well, I don't have the intuition that that's true at all. I'm just using the dictionary definitions.
Well, like, you don't think it's the case that if I went up to anybody on the street and said, which is better, maximally good world, maximally moral world, which one's better? They're going to say maximally moral, like 99% of the time.
Well, I'd like to see a poll for that. The way I figure it, a good world would include a moral world.
All right. From your perspective, I totally understand that. And if you have like a deep understanding of philosophy and you understand goodness to be a larger concept, I would understand that. But the way the most people use the word, that is not the case.
I just don't understand that, because in what usage of the word good is not going to include morality? Isn't a moral person a good person?
Again, it depends on how you use the word and what you mean it as. The point here is like, which is the bigger concept? Which one's the flower and which one's the rose? And from the perspective that you're looking at it, it changes. From the common perspective of most people, the morality, the term moral, is the flowers, it's the larger concepts, and goodness is a part of morality. Whereas from your perspective, morality is a smaller part of goodness.
I mean, I think I get what you're saying, where it's like goodness would be like the dirt or the earth, and morality would be the flower. It's like the derived concept. And so morality seems to be the umbrella that would include more stuff in it, and so it's more important. But I would say, like, from a bottom-up perspective, the fundamental, the basis, the fundamentals, like, to steal some Darth Dawkins speech, to me, when you're looking at a bottom-up system, whatever is the bottom is actually the more all-inclusive term or phenomenon, because it's what allows the flower to grow out of it.
From your perspective, but from general public's perspective, morality is the core thing. Goodness is a outcome of, is a like more specific version. So like all roses are flowers, but not all flowers are roses. All goodness is morality, but not all morality is goodness. That's kind of the argument here.
So that's like saying, would you rather have all the roses or all the flowers? Well, all the flowers includes all the roses.
Right, and the morality is the flowers and the goodness is the roses. That's the general public's perspective, because most people are theists. So they think God is the grounds of morality. He is perfectly moral.
But how could you be good, or how could you be moral without being good?
Because goodness is not a thing. It's not a property. It's just a descriptor. So like, if we're thinking of what entities exist, we're thinking morality is an entity that exists. God, whatever. Goodness is just a word we made up to describe stuff. So in the general public's understanding, goodness is nothing. There is no such thing. It's not a class of things. It's an arbitrary concept that we've labeled for nothingness. But morality is a thing. It really, really exists. It's a concrete existing thing. And so when you say a perfectly good world, you're just saying, well, perfectly awesome world or something. This is subjective. There's no such quality. Perfectly moral world, you mean it corresponds to this actually existing thing's nature or whatever. And so the way people mostly use the words goodness is less important than morality. But if we use it your way and say goodness is more important than morality, then it leads to this counterintuitive consequence where a perfectly good world is better than a perfectly moral world. And most people would disagree with that. Like every person I've asked the question to pretty much has said, no, perfectly moral world and perfectly good world, those are like the same. Like there's no difference there. Like that doesn't make any sense. But the way you're using the question, the way you're using the definition, they are extremely different, which is a hugely counterintuitive consequence, which indicates that's just not how most people understand the words. And so I think it's not an accurate representation of how people use morality or what people see morality as.
I mean, like, hypothetical people aside, taking this poll, first of all, I don't understand how you can be moral without being good, but morality would be more of a practice, and good, I think, is the actual property. Hold on one second. Sorry. So the property of goodness is, I understand some people might have an intuition that's different from this, but think we can unpack that, the just plain dictionary definitions. So, for example, a good clock tells time. So that is a property of the clock, which is its function. But morality itself, I don't know what the property of morality is, because that's based on decisions. The only property there would be whether it's good or bad, because you're making a decision. Is this decision moral or not based on whether the consequences or the principles are good or bad?
Right. I understand your perspective. I just don't think it aligns with how most people use the terms. Because when we're talking about morality, again, what that refers to is the sensations people have, that they use the word moral to refer to. That's what it is. And whatever it happens to be that the vast majority of people are using this word to mean, that's whatever morality is or whatever causes these feelings. And so the fact that you have a very esoteric definition of good and moral and their relationship based on your philosophy background, that just doesn't map on to how most people use the word. And what we're describing when we talk about morality isn't these philosophical definitions. It's an actual thing that exists in the world, which is what people experience it as, not how philosophers like to make up definitions in a dictionary. And so the actual evidence here would be is how do people use the word? What do their intuitions map onto, and not how do somebody write it in a dictionary? That doesn't really make a difference.
Well, they write the dictionary based on how people they use it. But my intuition would, regardless, would say I don't feel something is moral if I don't like it. I feel that it's bad. I have bad feelings, and then I call that those principles that I use to describe why it's bad morality. And again, I'm just using the dictionary definition. So if you Oxford Languages says principles concerning the distinction between right and wrong and good and bad behavior. So even the definition is based on whether it's good or bad, and that's the determining factor of what morality is.
Well, no, again, that's wrong. We know that's wrong because we have numerous cases. Sam Harris talked about this case where they lynched an elephant for trampling a bunch of people because it was immoral. Mm-hmm. They punished the elephant. The elephant doesn't have a way to choose. They don't think that the elephant was some kind of evil demon thing. The way we apply morality is expanding based on our social condition. As we gain more comfort, technology, whatever, the scope of morality is going to change. The things that we see as morality are going to be smaller and smaller infractions. So like back in the day, most people didn't even think slavery was necessarily immoral, just part of everyday life. Now we think it's horribly immoral. So the smaller infractions on our wills is seen as immoral, the more freedom, more technologically free we become. And the same applies to who is culpable. The culpability also increases, like who becomes more able to be blameworthy also increases with our level of technological ability. And this pattern, I think, is going to continue well beyond the point where humans harm each other. So once we get to a point of technologically where humans no longer harm each other, based on your definition, the word will stop being used. It will never be used again. But I think that's wrong. I think that's just a misunderstanding of human nature. And that what we really understand morality as is not that, even though that's how it's mostly used in today's culture and not used in all contexts. There are many contexts where inanimate objects are considered evil, just natural evils in Christianity. I think that a better understanding of human nature is that once we get to that point where we're not killing each other anymore, the word moral will not go out of use. The meaning will be expanded to include rocks falling on people. I think that's going to happen in the future. I think we have keys in our society today to see that's going to happen in the future. But if we understood your definition, that this is the correct definition, then that won't happen. The word is just going to be stopped using. I think that's wrong. I think that's clearly going to be wrong. And that as we improve, the word will expand its meaning to focus on the core issue, which is more imposition on will. And that's really the focus of morality, not this hyper-specific focus on action, because as we gain in our understanding of neurology, that's not really going to be a thing anymore. There's not going to be this culpability aspect anymore. It's just going to be consequences. The consequences of actions, whether they're done by a human or a rock, are independent of will and acknowledging your actions. And I think that's going to be a far more accurate representation of what's going to happen in the future, which is why it's a better more accurate usage of the term than the one you're using.
Yeah, so I think that the ability to perceive the consequences of one's actions is going to increase good or bad consequences, or in your case, moral and immoral. So that would be a better world with if something is self-aware. But you said morality is applied, or people try to apply it, and I agree that morality is applied by sentient things based on what they perceive is like a good or bad outcome. So it seems like there's this phenomena of people want something, good or bad or whatever you want to call it, and then they apply these principles on top of it. And the best way to say that is it doesn't make sense that we're going to say people see moral and immoral things, and then they create these principles that is goodness and badness. It makes more sense to call the principles morality. Morality is a system. That's why we have these words, moral system, instead of good and bad system. So morality is commonly used as this term that includes systems like ethics, and good and bad are just used to kind of place judgments on things. So it seems more fundamental, and I don't perceive that the common usage of the word is what you say, but I guess we can only turn to the dictionary for that. I don't know how to break that tie.
We can ask people. Like I've asked dozens and dozens of people this question, but like, so if we're trying to, our disagreement is of what the core fundamental nature of what this word refers to, and if we wanted to see who's right, supposedly, like we could go into the future and go to the point where there are no longer any other people harming other people, no conscious entities hurting other conscious entities, and we can just see, does the word moral disappear, no longer used because there's no more immoral actions, or will it change its meaning to incorporate inanimate objects hurting conscious entities? And I think that's what's going to happen. Seems like we can see patterns in history where there's a word that means something to people and is used with some core meaning that at the time they think is significant, but then it changes to incorporate new ideas in the future. And we see that all the time in language, and that's likely going to happen in morality. So if morality refers to some actually existing property, and the core of that property is imposition of will, which I think it is, then as society progresses and there are less humans harming other humans or conscious entities harming other conscious entities, instead of morality disappearing, the definition of morality will include these other impositions of will, and I see that as highly likely. And in the future, we can test this to see who's right, but I think it's very, very probable that's what's going to happen, and it's highly unlikely that there's going to disappear the word morality. It's just, I don't think that's going to happen. So and if that's the case, testable prediction in a billion years or whatever, we can find out who is right. And so I think it's up to the judges or the audience to decide what do they think is going to happen in the future. When we get to the point where there's no one's killing other people, are we just going to stop using moral language, or are they going to change the word moral to incorporate more concepts that are going to be relevant to the time period, which is what I think is significantly more likely.
So yeah, I mean, I agree totally that imposition of will is a good thing, or imposition of will is a bad thing. But so there's the phenomenon of increasing or maintaining functions, and I would include enforcing one's will on that. And then there's the opposite phenomenon of decreasing functions, and I would say imposition of will fits into that. And then there's the phenomenon of agents understanding what that is and making principles and behaviors based on that understanding. And I can't flip the words to say that first phenomenon is morality and the second phenomenon is good and bad. But I could do the opposite. I could say the phenomenon of increasing and maintaining functions is good. The phenomenon of making principles based on that first phenomenon is ethics and morality. and that makes sense. And so it doesn't seem that the core property would be imposition of will, because there needs to be something behind. Why is imposition of will important? Why does that matter? Why is that good or bad?
Well, I think it's intrinsically just moral. I think, like when you mentioned a good clock, I don't think there's any such thing as a good clock. Clocks are, they don't have any moral or goodness property inside of them. We make them to do stuff, and if they do stuff, we like them. But there's no goodness in the clock. It doesn't exist. I think there is goodness or morality in what happens to people. And so this larger concept of goodness, I don't think is a thing where that includes clocks. I think it's just humans made up a word to describe what we like and don't like. Whereas morality, I think, is a thing that exists as a fundamental force in nature. And it doesn't apply to clocks. There's no doesn't care about the clocks. So there's no good clock where there is a fundamental essence of goodness. And I think that will be borne out in the way we use the term in the future. And we just have to wait and see.
Okay, so I mean, you're just saying morality is enforcing one's will, or immorality is imposition of will. And so I would say that definition is a lot more esoteric than what I've been talking about. And to kind of tease that out, like, I think that there is a common property. You said there is a property behind imposition of will, and I agree, but I think that property also exists in clocks, which is good or bad. So that property in, I don't know what word you want to use, maintaining or imposing your will on the world, or enforcing your will, that property is that it increases or maintains like a level of function, right? And there's that same property with like working mechanisms like clocks. And there's a property of things that destroy that function. And that same property would be what you're talking about as immorality, which would be, if I'm destroying the function of your will, I'm imposing your will. So there is that common property between the clock and the will. And I think that you can only call that good or bad.
Yeah,
or perhaps correct and incorrect. But
yeah, I don't understand that at all. So like, my definition is involuntary impositions of will are immoral, but voluntary impositions of will are moral. So like, if you ask someone to break your leg or something because you, I don't know, whatever reason, and they do it, that's moral. And so simply breaking the function of the thing wouldn't be bad. And the same thing would apply to clocks here. Like, there's no such thing in my model of the goodness of a functioning clock or the badness of a non-functioning clock. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Those are just subjective criteria we label, but the property isn't in the clock anywhere. It's not objective. It's a subjective preference. I like this clock, therefore it's better. No objective features whatsoever. Whereas morality, I think, is objective. I think there is an objective fact of the matter independent of any opinions. Whereas this goodness thing is a subjective definition we've made up to just refer to stuff we like and nothing more. And so it doesn't make sense to me to think that there is this objective property of goodness which applies to clocks and morality, and that we're just identifying this objective property of goodness when we label moral things and good clocks. To me, that doesn't make sense. To me, I think there is no objective property of goodness. Goodness is just a label of stuff we like. But I think there is a property of the moral, perfect morality that has nothing to do with clocks or goodness of functioning things. And I think most people's intuition would agree with that. I think most people don't think that there's some essence of goodness in the functioning of a clock. But they do think there's some essence of goodness of morally significant agents and conscious entities. And so I don't think that most people would agree that morality is a subset of some larger goodness thing.
It just seems like there's something more fundamental to why imposition of will is important.
Well, I would agree
that there's something. Okay.
Well, so
and
like
that's the property I'm talking about.
Well, I think it's an thing, like a platonic object, God's nature, a law of nature. I think the more fundamental thing is there's actually a thing that actually exists there that instantiates this. I don't think it's some property of goodness. Like, you could say that it's more the ontology. The ontology of what grounds this is what's important. And what is it that this thing instantiates as goodness? Is it the function of clocks? I think no. I don't think that's one of the things that it instantiates as goodness.
Well, they have a shared common property, which is like the existence of function or potential.
I don't see those as important whatsoever. Like rubber bands have function and potential. I don't think they're moral. I don't think it's immoral to break a rubber band.
Well, that's just how we use the word good. A good car functions, a good clock functions, a
Right.
good person. If we unpack how that's used, essentially, a good person is not going around impeding other people's functions. They're going around enabling or maintaining other people's functions.
I mean, not like Dr. Kevorkian killed people, but he was a good person. So I don't.
But okay, so that kind of goes back to, I liked your example of breaking your leg voluntarily. So I like to include the concept of creative destruction, where breaking your leg voluntarily would essentially enable some other function. Like maybe you're, I don't know, trying to sneak in somewhere and you want to look like you want to get through the handicap entrance or something. I don't know. But if you're voluntarily doing that, you're saying this outcome I get is better than me having two functioning legs, at least temporarily, right? So
Preferable, yeah.
there's something that we're referring to when we say it's better or worse, and I think that's preservation of function or increase of function.
Well, I think function there is just an arbitrary term. I don't think there's any such thing as function. It doesn't exist in the world, just like goodness doesn't exist in the world. It's just a label we give stuff. So like the break your leg example is kind of like a video game turning up the difficulty. So break my leg, I can still beat you at basketball. And so the point is just to demonstrate that your skills at basketball are so great that you could beat me with a broken leg. The same thing would apply to a video game, playing it on a really high difficulty. But I don't think there's any objective feature there of the world of function that you're destroying, or an objective feature of goodness that you're impinging on. Like if we were looking at all of the objective factors in the universe, nothing has changed there. And so I just don't think it makes sense to count those as real objective properties and then to, by extension, measure morality as a feature of this other property that I don't think even exists. To me, it just doesn't make sense to say those are existing properties. But I mean, I guess I can understand from your perspective, if that was the case, then I could understand why you would see morality in that context.
Well, I think plain language use of the word bad would be if you break your leg, that's bad for your leg. That's bad for your ability to walk. But
or just to clarify,
it might be good.
I agree with that. But the question is would people say that badness, when they use the word bad, refers to some actually existing objective fact of the universe, like an objectively law or something? And people would say, no, it's just a preference.
Yeah, it's an objective fact that leg no longer functions as a leg.
Well, I agree with there, but the point is,
it could function as a way to demonstrate your skill, and saying I'm so good at basketball means that I can perform these functions of basketball.
Well, it's more like, I don't know, yeet. Let's go with yeet. Yeet is a funny word. Is that thing more yeet or less yeet? And they add like a pink bunny ear to it. More yeet or less yeet. Now, the yeetness of the thing is someone's personal preference. They just think it's associated with some subjective cultural phenomenon that they've made up that doesn't, this is not a universe property that somehow we're in the universe, there's a level of yeetness for each object, and you've increased the level of yeetness for this object. And the same thing applies to bad. When you say good or bad, there's not an actual level of goodness or badness measured by the universe independent of our subjective opinions that you have then changed by breaking its leg. Most people probably would not think that's the case. But they do think that's the case for morality. They think there is some objective level of morality measured by the universe independent of our opinions that is changed under certain conditions. Whereas good and bad, no, that's not something most people agree on. And so good and bad are more like yeet or whatever the funny new words people use, say less, bet, I don't know, whatever silly criterion they have as kids. Those are not objectively existing properties in the universe independent of opinion. Even though they can refer to things in reality that are objective, those properties themselves do not instantiate any existing universal property. Whereas morality, most people think, does.
I just don't know how we can substantiate that claim, because intuitively it would seem to me that if you're calling something moral, you're saying it because it has a level of goodness to it.
Well, if I say Michael Jordan's the best basketball player, you can also say that has a level of goodness because of the ambiguity of the way we use the word good, but that doesn't mean goodness exists.
But you could describe in objective terms, if he's good at a certain thing, that means he can successfully perform functions for what that thing is.
Oh, well, let me put it to you a different way. Let's say aliens came to planet, had no words for goodness or badness, and you said Michael Jordan's a good basketball player. Like, what facts could they discover in Michael Jordan to discover he's a good basketball player? Like, I don't know. Like in the case of mine view of morality, I think they could actually just look at the moral law, which is a part of physics, and say, well, he corresponds to this law. Done. Problem solved. But I don't think that can apply to goodness of a basketball player, because I mean, you could apply the same thing to, let's say, if he's good at being a bad basketball player. So someone who's what are they, Harlem Globetrotters, or the clown guys who are bad at basketball, but they're good at making people funny, even though they're doing the exact same thing, playing basketball, and one is successful at playing basketball and one is successful at playing anti-basketball. There's no way to identify by looking at them which one is doing it correctly, because there's no correspondence to some fact in reality to say this one's right, this one's wrong. They're both just subjective interpretations of the thing to which we use the word good because we like the word good. For it to be go ahead.
You just look at what function they're performing.
But literally everything could be a function.
Yeah, but certain functions are more successful than others. Like there are clocks that kind of tell time, but they have to be adjusted every once in a while. And then there are clocks that are absolutely precise. And there are people who can make the basketball every time, and people who make the basketball half the time, and people who can only make half the audience laugh with their antics, or the whole audience laugh with their antics.
Would be like, so you are doing a perfect job being yourself, and I am doing a perfect job being myself, and that particle is doing a perfect job being itself. And so each individual atom is succeeding with 100% accuracy of having the function of being itself. And whatever it is. So like the broken clock, say the broken clock has a 87% function of telling time, but 100% function of being itself, of doing what it does. And so everything you could say has a perfect function. And so it doesn't make sense to say that there's like that function is some accurate representation of some actually existing goodness property, because there would be no way to differentiate which functions are the ones that actually correspond to reality, because you could literally define anything as a function. There'd have to be some correct functions and incorrect functions, and some medium to differentiate which ones are the correct functions and which ones are the incorrect ones. And there'd have to be some independent way in reality to verify what these are, even if we didn't know about it.
Yeah, so about, each individual person is good at being what they are, but it's about what effect they have on the rest of the world. So you can be a great serial killer, but is that good for the universe? No, because it's decreasing the functions of people who are part of the universe, et cetera, et cetera.
But it could be increasing the functions of the atoms to rehydrate the nitrogen and carbon content in the earth, and that could be good from maybe some perspective. So again, I think in order for your argument to hold, you would need some kind of actually existing object, like a platonic object or something, of function, to determine which functions are the right ones and which ones are the wrong ones. And if you don't have that, it just seems like it's arbitrary.
Well, it's basically whatever is increasing coexistence overall, like from a universal perspective. So yeah, you could, spilling someone's blood on the ground is going to maybe water some plants, but the human does a lot more functions than the plants do. And the plants would continue living anyway. So you're not contributing anything back into it. It's basically, I guess you could describe it in terms of kind of entropy almost, because the more highly ordered things, like there's a difference between more highly ordered things and less highly ordered things. So the human is more highly ordered than the plants, who get a little extra water, and maybe the plants are happy for that, but you're losing all of the order and function that a human brings to the equation.
Well, if it's entropy, that would mean like the Big Bang was the most functioning part of the universe. I don't think that makes sense, but
I would say the Big Bang is a pretty good thing. It allowed us to exist.
well, no, I mean, if you're saying that function equates to entropy and lower entropy equals more function, then the lowest point of entropy in the universe was Big Bang, which doesn't seem like it would have the most function, right? That would be.
I'm not sure entropy can map on exactly, right. But it's just kind of a analogy.
Right. So yeah, it's a separate topic. I thought it was funny though.
Yeah.
But so it seems like for that to be the case, again, there'd have to be some thing in the universe to differentiate which functions are the right ones. You said coexistence or something. And so there'd have to be something somewhere in the universe to say that coexistent functions are more important than non-coexistent functions. And I don't know what that would mean.
Are you trying to
TJump, I'll let you finish your statement and then we'll wrap up, unless you've changed your mind about closing arguments. Have you changed your mind about? No.
I'm right, he's wrong.
Okay. All right, did you want to finish your sentence?
What was that?
Okay. So now the question on my mind is, how do I get Leo alone? So Snake, can you distract the audience while Leo and I come to an objectively moral and good decision on who won this debate?
Yes, we will read out some questions.
I thought we just start reading like Dostoevsky's. Like just start reading just page one.
Just get the dictionary.
Just get the dictionary. Yep.
All right.
Yes.
Simos Funk asks, "I'm hungry, so is my body being immoral to me?"
Yes.
Okay. My response to that would be no, but it's being bad. Although so this is kind of the part about creative destruction, pain versus pleasure, is pain can be good for you sometimes. So it informs you that you need to eat, but not having food is bad. So because it decreases your functions of your body, and pain can sometimes be bad because, again, it increases the functions of your body. And I think we can use this paradigm to pretty much describe everything about these questions.
Smack Dab in my chat asked, Snake, could you show us your impression of Cousin It?
I'll try. Yeah, let's read from your chat as well. It's kind of parted, so. Oh wait, I've got
the glasses. Gotta have the glasses, right?
I've got some somewhere around here. Where are they when I need them? Hold on, guys. I'll find them. But yeah,
he says very nice.
I'll put them on when I find them. How's that?
It was good. That was good. He's entertained. Not entertained enough to.
Are you not entertained by my antics? Was that a good performance?
Yes. Now the next one says do a backflip.
You couldn't see it. The camera's not wide enough.
Snake, I have a question. How I'm? Yeah, we're in the Discord, but I'm like server muted or something like that in the cafe voice. I don't know what to do.
You guys
do I need to like check a box or something? I don't.
Somebody who's a mod needs to unserver mute you is what would need to happen.
Let me see here.
Because I try to unmute and it says you do not have permission to speak in this channel.
Oh, geez.
You can give him a role and then take the role away, and that usually fixes that.
I'll just make it a public channel. Speak. Try it now. Dang, I don't know.
It still says the same thing. Let me see if I leave and come back in, if that'll
Let me give you the roll. Technical issues. They're riveting.
Oh yeah, now it says channel locked.
What? I opened it though. Discord, you suck.
This is why I'm never on Discord.
You could try another room or something, but
Well, there's music room, but I think that one's locked as well because I see the little.
Can't you guys just go to whereby.com and just do a separate voice chat or something?
yeah. I think Cinematic should have access to another room on Steam or
Hi.
Streamlabs.
Can you guys see me or hear me?
Yes.
Just text each other.
Leo,
Go
why
into
don't you
text
just
chat.
call me?
Because I don't have your phone number. Wait, how do you
Because I'm
do?
about to give you
Wait,
my
hold on.
number.
How do you do like a private call on Discord? Can't you do that?
Yeah, you can just click on their name and click call.
Okay.
Okay.
Start voice call. All right. I should be calling you.
Next chat or next question.
I'm calling you on Discord, Cinema.
All right. You two are muted now.
I'm not receiving it.
Hey, you're muted. Okay. If something is immoral when it is involuntary, then it depends on the person having some kind of intentional state. Doesn't that make it objective? I guess that could go equally for either of us.
Well, I think that's a question for you because I claim it is objective, but
Okay.
not for that reason though.
Well, I think it's objective. If something is immoral when it is involuntary, it depends on the person having some kind of intentional state. Well,
Oh, doesn't that make it subjective? No.
yeah.
So there's the fact that a person has a subjective experience. Like if I see a TV, the TV still objectively exists. And I think morality works the same way. So I think morality is some objectively existing object that we see or we experience through our intuitions, and that existing object instantiates the fact that impositions on our will are against its nature and so objectively bad.
Yeah, and I would say, there's some underlying fact of so that you derive these principles from the fact of that when you impose on someone's will, that usually creates decreases the functions. So that would be objectively bad. And a society based on principles where you can just violate anyone's will at any time is going to fall apart and create it wouldn't create much of a society at all.
What?
What was that?
What? Well, like if it was in the laws of physics, it wouldn't fall apart. Why would it fall apart?
Well, you can have things in laws of physics that create unstable systems versus stable systems.
Sure. But like if we just added to a law of physics, it was physically impossible to force people to do things they don't consent to, that wouldn't make anything fall apart.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you can have a society that allowed imposition of will if it was physically impossible. I think that would be good.
Me too.
All right. Simus Funk asks, for Tom, your system seems to only tell you what is immoral. So is everything that is not immoral, therefore moral? If so, what is your argument for that?
No, so there's amoral things like rocks hitting each other are amoral. Moral would be a voluntary assistance of will. Immoral is an involuntary imposition of will. Amoral is everything else. It does not do anything to wills.
All right. I would say you need a definition of good and bad.
I just said that. Oh no, you're using good and bad as separate. I use them as synonymous with
Yes.
moral and immoral. Gotcha.
Yes. Because then I suppose it's just whatever's opposite of bad, but it seems like I start with what's good. It seems like you're starting with what's bad and taking the opposite of that.
Yes. You can go either direction. It doesn't make a difference which direction you go for my model.
Okay. Ted Gunderson.
Immoral.
Jailing a criminal is moral or immoral?
Immoral. It's an easy one to figure out. Like, would you be more moral to turn the other cheek or to kill the prisoner? Let's turn the other cheek is more moral. So if we didn't need to do it, if there was a way to cure them, Sam Harris gave this example. Like if there's a way to cure a criminal by giving them a pill, would it be justified to keep them in prison? Well, no, they're cured. So it's immoral to just keep them in prison as a punishment. And so jailing a criminal is something we do pragmatically, but it's not a moral thing. It's not the correct thing to do. It's just what we need to do given our limitations. And once we no longer have those limitations, keeping it around would be an obviously immoral thing.
Mm-hmm. I mostly agree. I would say that it would be a necessary evil type situation where it's certainly preferable, morally speaking, to rehabilitate this person. But it may be necessary to protect society from their actions. And it's a better society with serial killers in jail, even though, yes, it's immoral to take people's will away from them. But if you have to do it to protect the will of other people, then, necessary evil. All right. Do you have any more questions from your chat?
Not right now, I don't think.
Okay. All right. To TJump. Do you also believe there's an objective property of beauty? If not, what makes it different from morality?
No, I think beauty is simply an evolutionary product based on subjective preferences. I don't think there's an objective property of beauty. What makes it different is the fact that I don't think that there's going to be a pattern of consistent beauty across all different forms of life, whereas I think there will be one for morality. And I think that's the core evidential difference of why one would be considered objective and the other one wouldn't.
All right. Yeah, beauty seems to be subjective, although there's seems to be some properties like I don't like the golden rule and symmetry and balance and things like that do go into beauty. And I think even goodness, the way I use the word, it could go into beauty as well. Just a blank wall with nothing on it is might be beautiful to someone, but
so wouldn't that make it objective by your definition? Beauty would be objective like morality was because it would be one of the flowers of goodness.
I think there's objective properties to why we appreciate things as beautiful, but I think ultimately that it's a lot of it comes down to preference. I think the brain has evolved to prefer things with like objectively I don't know what to call it, good qualities, or just objectively I don't know, round, balanced qualities. I think there's a reason why we prefer those things. And complexity can confer meaning as well, versus like a piece of art that's just, someone put up a canvas. It's just a piece of white canvas with white paint on it. It might be philosophically profounder if that's your thing, but I don't think that that's necessarily beautiful. But again, I think it's more subjective than objective.
The duct-taped banana was more beautiful.
I would say so. Yeah, Debate Cafe Discord. I think that's all of our questions for now. Do you have any more from your chat?
Should you run for president on that platform? Yes.
Which platform? Harry,
Yes, the Harry
more
Vagina
like a Harry
platform.
Vagina.
I think that would be a very successful platform.
Mm-hmm. Harry Vagina for president. Beauty, that which pleases the will. This question's for Godless Girl. Yeah, so that's it for the chat. I can chat questions. Chat, if you have any last minute questions, we are now closing the question and answer period. And I can call our judges back in. Have you debated Godless Girl, TJump?
Many times.
Okay. On non-cognitivism?
Probably.
Yeah. I particularly like the one where you and her were going up against, I think it was some Christians. I'm sure
Yes.
you've done that a bunch of times. So.
Yeah, the one where she got drunk and then left.
Yeah, yeah. Those are always entertaining. Let me see. Oh, is Leo back? Leo's unmuted. Are you there? No, he was muted. Yeah. Okay. I will call our judges and we will confer. And if you've got anything from your chat or anything to say, if not, I can put up a little.
I just got about 30 messages about comments on opinions of Gigi, different varying opinions of Gigi.
Mm-hmm. I think, if nothing else, quite entertaining.
Emotional damage.
So that means okay, so yes, Godless Girl, I got your email. I have been quite busy, so I meant to get back to you. So I can probably do that today. And I still don't know how to pronounce this guy's name. Yudhef Hukyu. So that means I think this is a follow-up question. So that means we can't make objective statements about morality. I'm not sure who that's for or what it's in response to. Or maybe he's just talking to Godless Girl.
Yes, probably that's probably what it was response to. Yes, Godless Girl thinks there is no objective morality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in that case, I do think if morality doesn't exist, there's no point arguing over anything because everyone's opinion is equally valid.
But money.
You could, I mean, yeah, you could say something is lucrative versus not lucrative. All right. Yep. Okay. Let me call the judges and we'll be right back. All right, they are currently doing some math or something.
Math?
Yeah, they have to average the scores. I don't know.
Oh, Jay Verjara asked, who is more coherent, a sober Gigi or a drunk Church of Entropy?
I would probably say sober Gigi.
I think that's a logical contradiction.
At times, yeah. I don't agree with the non-cognitivism, but
I guess I
Do you
could
think she's
possibly
good?
agree. I think that, yeah, Gigi makes coherent statements, whereas Church of Entropy makes statements that are not as coherent.
Yeah. I did debate flat earthers with her on my team, and that was fun. It's actually kind of useful because she kind of gave him like the sacred geometry argument, which I don't really agree with, but kind of appeals to the flat earthers. Circles are natural and stuff. So, yeah, it's fun. We want to have her on and debate something. So, maybe we'll debate sacred geometry. Who knows?
She should still be in my Discord. You can contact her there pretty easily.
Oh, yeah, I've got her email. Did you guys debate ever? I feel like I remember that.
Multiple times.
Yeah. She got pretty mad at you, didn't she?
Maybe.
Or I don't know. Maybe I'm remembering a different debate. But yeah. She's got the physics all figured out. I like her, but she scares me a little bit. Is this about Church of Entropy?
Probably. Or maybe Gigi.
Nobody believes the earth is flat. They're trolling. I think that's true sometimes, but people are that dumb. I had a flat earth debate last night, and I was like, I had a headache after. It was just, I legitimately felt like I lost brain cells.
Which flirt were you debating?
Witsit Gets It, and who I like to call Witless, and
Witsit Done Gets It.
yeah, and Karen B. Hadn't heard of her before. Godless Girl asks, TJump, do you think you've ever lost a debate?
Yeah, I've lost a few. There's the 9/11 one because I didn't do any research for it, and that guy did a lot of research. I think there was a few other ones like COVID related, some heavier sciencey ones where people did research and I didn't. I lost.
Was it a 9/11 truther?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, there's some screwy stuff about that, and if you don't, conspiracy theorists can throw out a lot of facts, and you don't necessarily know how to counter them. That's the problem. That's why we should just deplatform YouTube in general. Just deplatform the internet. That's what I say.
That would be my job. You would be taking away my living. I'm not a fan.
Just go down to the town square.
Get a speaker's corner like London.
Old school. All right. Where are those judges? You guys need to learn how to add better. Add faster.
Yeah, TJump is right. Only takes like 1 + 1.
Mm-hmm. Scores are out of 100. And as always, the scores do not reflect. Well, basically, I don't like to even think about it as winning or losing, but just kind of a score on your performance. We try not to reflect personal opinions of the judges. And yeah, I want to go back to judging because I've done way too many debates on this channel. We have Mark Reed versus Praise I Am next week it's Luca versus Praise on Protein Evolution. Mark Reed versus Jesus is Lord on Biblical Slavery next week.
Get those heavy hitter creationists, huh?
Cinematic
Yeah.
will be in here. It will be back in shortly. We finished judging or scoring, I should say.
And we want to get some theists and even creationist judges who we can trust. So
I think Rebecca would be a good choice. I think she'd be fair.
okay.
The Bible is
Bread of life.
bread of life.
Bread
That's
of
it.
life. Okay.
What about what's your name? Babies are just moved location.
Is that S.J. Thomas?
Yes.
Not sure if she'd
Am
be
I
down,
here?
but we could
Can
try.
people see me? Can people hear me?
Nope.
Am I here?
Nope.
I'm here?
Nope.
I'm not here?
Nope.
Oh, no.
You don't exist.
Yay!
You achieved transcendence.
Yes! Finally. All
All
right.
right.
Should we
I
do
do
this?
not think, therefore I do not am.
But if you don't exist, can you still be held morally accountable? That's the question.
Yes, God murdered babies.
Just really quickly, cinematic. Do we read off what our individual scores for each one were, or are we just going to give them what the averaged was?
Do you want to?
Well, I just didn't know what the sort of the procedure was. It just really depends on what you say. I mean, you guys run this channel. I'm just a guest.
I think, do you guys want your individual scores from each judge, or would you just prefer the average scores?
As long as it'll take less than 10 minutes, it's fine.
Okay. Whatever. Sounds great. Okay, let's read our individual scores. Okay. So I'll give my feedback first and my take. And so basically, I felt like this debate was entirely definitional, and that neither side truly proved their own perspective on how to define morality completely and thoroughly. However, there was a lot of insistence in terms of intuition on the part of TJump that wasn't necessarily backed up by logos and heavily anecdotal. I felt like sort of the core of TJump's arguments were, if you ask anybody on the street, they would say this. And the thing about an intuitive appeal is it has to land with the judges. And I intuitively do not think that morality is the creation of goodness or the dirt and goodness is the roses. In fact, my intuition leads sort of the opposite. So by appealing to intuition, I feel like that actually sort of backfired. That being said, I found your sort of appeal to, if we look to what our feelings are, we can have an idea of what morality is, but I would have liked to see more sort of concrete evidence. I did feel that Snake was better at sort of differentiating how we hold people or even agents accountable by the fact that a human can learn and a rock cannot. I think that it was a bit strange when TJump brought up, can you change the morality of the universe? You can change the laws of physics. I don't really see where that necessarily landed. And there were definitely like a lot of assumptions in someday we can. Well, you're just kind of hypothesizing there in the same way that you were hypothesizing that it is even, possible that we could live in a universe where humans cannot hurt each other. And if they did, assuming that morality, we would find a new definition for it. There's no real logos behind that. It's all just kind of self-insisting. I did feel like towards the end, TJump really gained some ground on the exact same thing that Snake lost a godless girl to, which is sort of Snake's assumption on what is functioning, which Snake, I still don't think that you've necessarily defended that correctly, because I felt like TJump kind of had you in the corner when he questioned, you could basically call anything functioning. How can you necessarily define what that is? However, I think that in terms of the clock, we're always coming back to clocks, which I love. I actually collect antique clocks. Snake basically said a good clock tells time. And TJump kind of tried to say, well, no one would ever call a clock good. People call clocks good all of the time. And also in terms of TJump's sort of questioning of the elephant, if an elephant tramples a bunch of people, you punish the elephant even though it wasn't intentional. I felt like Snake had a strong reply in which we're punishing the elephant to increase the functioning of society. And in terms of TJump challenging the Big Bang Theory would be the most moral possible thing because it created, or at least the most good thing because it allowed multiple functionings. I don't think that was necessarily a hard hit because you can just say, according to Snake's definition, yes. I did really enjoy TJump's questioning of yeetness being based on personal preference and equating that to functionality. But at the same time, that really only necessarily applies to goodness. And in short, I think basically TJump kept saying that if you ask everybody, would you rather live in a good world or a moral world, everybody would say moral. I don't think that's true. If he has statistics on that or data on that, then that would actually be a strong case, but it was just kind of an assumption. So that's my feedback, and I'm going to let Leo give his feedback and take on the debate.
Is he frozen? Uh-oh. Well, do you have the total scores? Because we might not get him back in time. You're muted.
I do have the total scores. Should I just go ahead and give them before Leo comes back?
Yeah, if he gets back in time, he can kind of give feedback, but...
All right. So basically for TJump, we gave him an average of 32.5 for style, 25.9 for content, and 14 for strategy, averaging out and adding up to 72.4. And for Snake, we gave Snake an average of 32.5 for style, the same as TJump, 30.5 for content, and a 16.5 for strategy, averaging out to 79.5. And we gave Snake the win. So,
well, all right.
All right.
Well, thank you for coming on, TJump.
Yep.
And yeah, we might have you back on to debate something else. We'll definitely ensure you win next time.
Oh, I won hands down. She's just objectively wrong about most of what she said. Okay. Peace out. See you guys later.
Most people intuitively, if you ask them on the street, would say that you won, right?
Morality is based, like all of the evidence of morality is intuition. So saying that just not.
Oh, wait.
Really.
Did you factor? Did you factor in the superior chair points? All right.
All right.